So today I'm here with Robbie Garner from Atlantic Computer Services. So Robbie, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hi, Savannah. Thanks for having me today. So my name is Robbie with Atlantic Computer Services. We're a managed services provider here in Wilmington. We businesses, small, medium, large, they face IT challenges, and we're a company that has put together a team of IT experts, and our mission is to help folks resolve those problems. We've been around Wilmington for quite a while. The company was originally opened in the late 90s. And I became involved with Atlantic Computer Services in 2006.
That's
So
awesome.
we have been here for a while.
Why did you choose to go into IT?
That's a great question. So I gotta think about that one for a little bit. So I always wanted to be, I knew that I wanted to be a business major in college. And I knew that, I like computers. I had a computer that I was able to, do these simple programs on, and it threw a little display on the screen kind of stuff, very, very early home computer type things. And I liked that a lot. And I found a blend of technology, computer related things in the business world. And so I got a degree in management information systems. And it just kind of fit me perfectly. I mean, it was the technology. It was how to solve business problems, or, how to work in a business with technology, how to leverage that technology to make money, I guess, So that's how I kind of got into it. And as I was getting close to graduation, I was becoming a little bit worried that at least my first job was going to be like in a cubicle farm or something, and I was a little worried about that, and that's something I didn't want to do. And I was able to get my first job with a local manufacturing company, and working with their IT, and they were growing, so it allowed me to kind of grow. So that's kind of how I got here. Eventually, I had an opportunity to become involved in ACS, and I kind of went to my employer and said, "Hey, I got this great idea," and I was able to continue on doing my work with my employer as a contractor, and that gave me an opportunity to kind of get ACS up and going, or it was already up and going. It was an opportunity to expand it.
Right. Well, it's great that you can work in a field that you enjoy and help so many people in their businesses. It's awesome when you can tie like a hobby or like a passion into helping people.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's every company is different. Every company's perspective on technology and security is different, and over the years that really has evolved. I mean, there's a few years ago, I mean, that security was always been important, but I think it's pretty fair to say that it's really ramped up in recent years. But some companies way back years ago were very concerned about security, and some companies really weren't. And that's just, I guess, just the way things were back then. So as security has become much more of an issue, it's really kind of guided how we've developed and how we have grown at Atlantic Computer Services. I mean, it's about serving the client, and what the client needs is what we have to figure out how to do.
Right.
So it's always changing.
Definitely. So what are some common mistakes that you see businesses make when it comes to security?
Yeah, so there are certainly a couple of things that we see. Number one is that people underestimate. Some folks underestimate the importance of cybersecurity, and kind of have a limited scope of what that involves. Again, years ago, you installed an antivirus program on your computer, and you're pretty much good to go. And unfortunately, some folks still feel that there's a pretty simplistic approach to keeping their data and their network safe, and it's just not that way anymore. So I would say, especially smaller companies really underestimate their exposure when it comes to cybersecurity. Just installing an antivirus program, or the free version of Bitdefender or whatever, that's just not it anymore. It's much more complex, and I tell people an easy way to think of how to approach security is, it's like an onion. They're layers. You have to address security in layers. So that's something that I would say a common mistake is they underestimate their exposure and how complicated it may be to keep a company safe these days.
Right. You've got to evolve with the technology.
Well, that's right. And sometimes it can get expensive, right? To do all you need to do. But at the same time, this industry that I'm in is changing so rapidly. There's softwares being developed every day that drive prices down. So what a small company is able to do today are things that only larger companies were able to do a couple of years ago. And so yeah, it's there is an expense to this, but at the same time, that cost is really driving down because there's so much development happening in the world of cybersecurity these days.
Right, and
so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and there can be bigger expenses if you don't take security
right.
precautions.
Yeah, so so different companies have different compliance issues that they have to abide by. Most companies that take credit cards are aware of PCI compliance, and you have to answer all these questions. And sometimes they ding you and say, hey, you have to fix this issue or whatever. But no surprise, healthcare companies they have compliance issues from HIPAA. But what people what most people may not realize is that, when a breach happens, especially in the medical field, HHS, there's all these government agencies that also get involved, which rightly so. But there's fines to pay. There's, the forensic investigation to figure out what happened costs money. So a small cyber breach can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And so, whether you're a healthcare company or any company, you have to have cyber liability insurance. I mean, that would be something that I couldn't sleep at night if I didn't have it.
Definitely. So what are maybe 3 things that you think every business should be doing to ensure that they are secured?
So it was tough for me to come up with 3, so I came up with 4.
Okay, even better.
So the first thing is, and this hopefully is not going to be a surprise, and this is for small companies and big companies alike, multi-factor authentication, right? So essentially, when you log into something, you have a username and a password. When you have multi-factor authentication enabled, then there's a third way that you have to authenticate to the system before it lets you in. So it's oversimplifying this, but let's say that your password was 123, and your username was your name and your password was 123. As silly as that would be, you still have some level of protection if you have multi-factor authentication in place. Now, please don't have your password 123. Please use complex passwords. But essentially, it's adding another layer that has to be authenticated before a system lets you in. And so our primary focus is multi-factor authentication related to email and then remote access. So if you're a larger company, typically, and you have folks logging back into your office, logging into your servers, you need a multi-factor authentication solution in place in order to prevent unwanted folks from getting into your servers. Email. So any business, small, medium, large, you should be on a sophisticated email system. You probably would be wise for you to move away from a POP mail system. There's little security on the back end of those systems. So Office 365, Gmail, or G Suite, you should be in a sophisticated email system. And you absolutely 100% have to enable multi-factor authentication. There's, I guess, a little bit of a, some people think that it's very inconvenient. Like every time I go check my email, I'm going to have to enter a code. Well, that's not the case. It doesn't happen that way. It's not inconvenient. It may ask you, if you when you check your email on a specific device, it remembers that, so It doesn't prompt you all the time. So probably not even once a week you get prompted for entering a code. So that's definitely the biggest thing that anybody could do, like right now, is enable, even if you're using Gmail at home, enable multi-factor authentication. Any software portal that you're logging into to pay bills, or your bank, hopefully they're forcing you to do multi-factor authentication, but you should enable it. If it's an option, it should be enabled. And if it's not an option, I would be very careful. So by far, that is the number one thing that a company could do, like right now, to have the biggest impact in keeping their network and their data safe, by far. All right, so the second thing is related to the software that you're using, right? So whether you're using Windows, or even if you're using Macs, or QuickBooks, the QuickBooks version you're using, or Adobe, all the software that you use, you have to be using updated software. So the importance is when a company updates their software, sometimes they're developing new features and things are turning on, but the majority of the time they're patching vulnerabilities.
Right.
So if you have a software, let's say you have a Windows operating system, and you never allow the update to run, then you have vulnerabilities on your system that's known in the world that you're not plugging, you're not patching. So when you install those updates, I know it's inconvenient, you come in and you sit down to work and all of a sudden Windows wants to do an update, or Office wants to do an update. I get it. But you really have to understand why that's important. And it's important because they're typically patching vulnerabilities. One of the things that we see with small companies is, maybe they're using a version of QuickBooks that's 2 or 3 years old. A couple of, and I don't know the specifics of what the guidelines are with QuickBooks, but every few years they are essentially shutting down support for older systems. And I think it may be QuickBooks 2018 or 2019 probably is to the point where it's no longer supported. And what that means is they're not actively trying to patch issues with that software. Right. So again, you're vulnerable because you're using software where nobody is really paying attention anymore. Nobody is doing anything to keep that software safe. So whether you're using QuickBooks or Adobe, or the Java version that you have running in your browser, all those things need to be updated. And that's really important. And it's typically not very difficult to do. Companies that have servers, that have IT folks, that should be something that they are pretty, they know how to get that done in an automated way. And then when you work with MSPs like ACS, those are some of the tools that we bring to the table that, we monitor that and we force that to happen. So
yeah, we've been talking a lot about like legacy software systems, because they leave you more vulnerable to security breaches, because a lot of the times they're not compatible with like modern security features like multi-factor authentication.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great example. I think we ran into an issue. I think we've been running into an issue over the past maybe few months or whatever, but folks that were using older versions of Office, they were that software authenticated in a certain way, and now that way is no longer supported by modern software. So we're always running into problems, and there is no fix. The fix is to get the modern software.
Yeah.
you know, in the IT world, everything is a subscription model these days. Whereas years ago, you would buy a copy of Office and that would last you for a few years. That's not available anymore. You have to buy per user. If there is a good thing, a pro from doing things that way, is that you always have access to the most recent version of that software. So nobody likes to pay subscriptions, but the one good thing you might say about it is that you always have access to the latest and greatest. So
exactly.
Definitely take advantage of that.
Right. Got to stay up to date.
Absolutely. So the third thing that I would say is that you should have a quality antivirus system. And what I mean from quality, what I mean is a next-gen antivirus system. These new products have AI, artificial intelligence, built into them. So they better can anticipate if the activity that's happening on your computer is suspicious. Traditionally, when you have an antivirus system on your computer, it's driven by virus updates. So let's say, today is Friday. Let's say yesterday it was announced or someone discovered that there was this new virus in the world. Well, all these antivirus vendors, they have to develop the solution, right? They have to develop the update that will stop that new virus that was identified. And that takes time. It could take a couple of days. It could take a week. And those are called 0-day viruses. And so this new technology actually can better identify when those things happen. So it doesn't have to wait until that virus definition gets released. So those aren't free. Malware bites, it's not going to do it. You need something, a quality system. SentinelOne, CrowdStrike, all these are popular next-gen antivirus solutions that you should have. Whether you've got one computer or 100 or whatever, you need to be operating with a quality next-gen antivirus application.
Definitely. You want to know if something's going on your computer.
Well, absolutely. And the cool thing about the software is that when it suspects something that it sees something that it says, hey, this could be an issue, it'll isolate it so it can't go anywhere. So
right.
It's really sophisticated software, and it definitely is a must-have these days.
Especially with stuff like phishing emails. You might accidentally download something that you think you got from like your boss or like a coworker.
Yeah.
And you put that on your computer, you're going to be in trouble if you don't have those.
Absolutely. So, when you click on those phishing emails, or some of them are trying to get you to give them money, it's more of a direct thing. Other ones they're trying to establish some connection so they can download something to your computer.
Yeah.
And that's where these applications would hopefully stop that.
Yeah. And they can be hard to spot if you don't know what to look for.
Very much so. That kind of takes me right into my fourth thing that I wanted to talk about today. And that's cybersecurity awareness. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And so hopefully you've heard a lot about it, but you hit the nail on the head. How do you recognize an email as a phishing email? Sometimes they're not very easy to spot. They can use the logos, they have the wording. Sometimes there is no broken English or incorrect grammar. Sometimes it looks totally legitimate. But there are still ways that you can at least have an idea if this is possibly a bad email. And making sure that your folks understand that, again, whether you're one person or 100, 500, 1,000, however many employees you have, doing something to make sure that they can easily, or at least they know what to look for when it comes to a suspicious email.
Right.
And sometimes that means, we're in an automated society. Everything is automatic these days. Sometimes that means putting back in some manual things, like before I send this wire transfer, maybe I need to verbally verify the wire instructions, or there are things like that a company can put in place that They're just that one last thing that may prevent, an unsuspecting employee to do something wrong. And you can't blame employees for this, because these guys are sophisticated. They know what they're doing. This is all psychological. So you gotta protect them, and the best way to protect the employee is through education.
Yeah. I hope a lot of people are utilizing all the resources that are out this month to, to help educate their employees. And I hope seeing things will help them understand the importance of training and education, especially
Sure.
everything we did with the cyber talks. I hope that people will utilize that and use it to their advantage, because it's there. It's a good resource.
Absolutely. So Atlantic Computer Services and other MSPs like us, we have the ability to put together a training program, which is great. We would love to do that. Mm-hmm. If you're a small company and, just go to Google and look for a YouTube video. I mean, you don't have to make this as super complicated as it may seem. Certainly an organized training campaign makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. But if for whatever reason you don't feel like you're able to do that, find a 5-minute YouTube video, right, and have your folks watch that. I mean, that's better than nothing. Right. If you are a company that deals with wire transfers, put in some manual process, some manual check. It's a last-ditch effort just to make sure what you're getting ready to do is correct. Those things don't cost any money. It just takes a little bit of effort and focus to protect yourself from right. What happens every day. This is not something that we never hear about. This kind of stuff. It just never happens in Wilmington. Well, it happens every day. So
yeah, that extra effort is definitely worth it.
For sure. Yeah.
I hope that we're trying to put out as much stuff as we can this month, hoping that it will at least reach a few people.
Absolutely. And again, I would say that, technology has changed dramatically. There are tools available for you as a small company that you didn't have access to a few years ago, or maybe you had access to them, but they were much more expensive. You've got to look at security differently. Security is an effort, right? It's not one thing. We don't just install one thing and then all of a sudden we're good to go. All these tools that we install, all these layers of security we put in place, they have to be managed and monitored. So it is an effort to keep a company safe these days. And if you're working with an IT professional and you have questions about what what are we doing to stay secure, you should be asking some questions. Hopefully they'll have things in place that maybe you're not aware of, which they probably do. So getting an idea, actually understanding what data you have, right? So one of the things we hear sometimes is, oh, well, I'm just a small company. Nobody really cares about the data that I have. Well, that may be true, but the value in what these guys are doing is not necessarily in your data. The value is in your access to that data, right? Your dependency on your own data. And there's, in a lot of cases, more value in that than the actual data.
Right.
So you can't say that, oh, well, just, nobody's going to be after me. It's not a big deal to me.
Yeah, well, this is definitely something that applies to businesses big and small.
For sure.
Well, thank you for talking to me today, Robbie. I hope that this is helpful to a lot of people, even if it's just a few. At least to help somebody.
That's right, absolutely. And if you have questions, I mean, we're happy to just jump on a call and, just chat about it. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. You can find us on the internet, www.acs-ilm.com, or our number is 910-799-6538. Again, happy to take a few minutes and just have a conversation about security. If you're looking for just second opinion or just a better overview of what's available, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to talk to you.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks, Savannah.